Hello, everybody. Welcome. Filippo here, founder at Harmony Nexus. And welcome to this Inspiring Dialogues from Urban Transformation, which is a series dedicated to exploring how we can transform urban environments into more vibrant, regenerative, and evolutionary human ecosystems. So today I have the pleasure of having with me Robert Gierke, who is the founder and CEO of Purenessity, a business consulting company focusing on purpose-driven brand building. His life purpose is to drive consciousness and development and to steward business to make a positive impact towards the 17 UN SDGs. Robert is also a B leader certified by B Lab to guide companies on their B Corp certification journey. And being a global citizen and having strong business skills and speaking 6 languages, he really dedicates his work to contribute to dignified life into the world. And Robert serves as a leadership coach at Singularity University. And motivated by his concern about climate change and his love for nature, he became a climate leader in Al Gore's Climate Reality Project in 2018. And as you can probably imagine, he's fully dedicated to being a driving force and in a global team of change makers in humanity's great transition to a mature planetary civilization. So great to have you, Robert. Thank you for joining us today.
Filippo, thank you so much for the invite. Great to be here with you.
Fantastic. So today we'll discuss one of the themes. We'll try to discuss beyond profit. So trying to redefine economic success in sustainable and regenerative communities. So we'll dive into innovative ideas and practices that are reshaping our understanding of what economic success means and whether we could use that word success or what different meanings could we bring to that word. And we'll really try and have a open conversation where we'll talk about new economic models that prioritize social and environmental well-being alongside, of course, financial viability. And we'll discuss principles of regenerative development and how they can be practically applied to create sustainable and thriving communities. And we'll also talk about the ethical and conscious side of financial practices that can drive the development of ecosystems that really support the well-being of both people and the planet as a whole. So let's dive straight into it, Rob. So let's talk about new economic models, or at least emerging economic models. What are some of the most promising new economic models you've encountered in your work that you think do a good job at prioritizing social and environmental well-being alongside financial viability?
That's a great question, and thanks for that question. Because the good news is there's many people around the world asking that question. And many people around the world understand that the old model is broken and that we cannot go forward with that. So they also already take responsibility for the next generations and are not just the me's in the short-term sense, but they have this maturity to take on this responsibility of how can life pro-evolutionary develop on this planet for all life forms. So that's the good news. And they exist in different forms. Some are on their own. Others have gathered in communities such as yours. Thanks for creating one and holding the space for these conversations, because that's really important. That people first have cultivate the narrative and then also get into the doing to bridge that narrative acting gap. That's very important. But it starts with the thought. It starts with a spoken word. It starts with a signed commitment sometimes. And the likes of these intentional communities to make life more humane and more sustainable on this planet. I could count a handful now. It's probably conscious capitalism is one of them. The B movement based on B Corp is one of them. And there's a thing called the cradle to cradle is definitely one of them, of these thoughts. The principles of regenerative design and biomimicry with big institutions like Alan MacArthur Foundation, which stand behind that. Then the Gemeinwohl-economy in the south of Germany and Austria. That was I was looking for, because there's sometimes even already certain partnerships and exchanges going on. Gemeinwohl-economy already has a contact with B Corp, for instance, because they realized, yes, we want basically, in essence, want the same, but we're two organizations. So the way I look at it is, in many from a big scale and change processes, these ideas, they're not in isolation. People all over the world want to have this discussions and want to act out. And another one would be the House of Beautiful Business. I'm also a member of. Then they pop up like mushrooms all over the world, and people who are really interested also become members of multiple of these communities. Hopefully, there's enough of a drive to gain momentum, because where we are today is still, unfortunately, still in the flat part of the exponential curve. So most developments in nature, in society, are exponential curves. It's never a straight line. That's a lie. It's not that straight line between A and B. It's always an exponential curve, and we're still on the flat part. We haven't reached tipping point yet. And unfortunately, also in the past, I want to say 2 years, because of geopolitics, because of a tip towards the right wing across the planet, there's sort of a contraction. There's like a move backwards, which halts, which keeps the progress on the flat part and slows us down towards tipping point. I'm still convinced, I'm a radical optimist, that we will reach that tipping point eventually, because for life on this planet, there's no other choice. You either reach it and have these communities unite and then get into action and move things forward, or we run into the sixth mass extinction. It's a terrible vision to have. So that's why I say I'm a radical optimist. Whether we reach it or not, it's to be seen, but it's just more fun to act out that way every day. So that's my read on these say business, call them business model, call them movements to promote a new economy. And also I have lived a couple systems. I was born into socialism, communism. That didn't really work out. I was born in 1977 in East Germany, and learned the likes of Lenin and Marx and Engels to work the same, to share the same. In that binary mode, it didn't work. That's why the socialist economies all failed and came to bankruptcy in the 80s. Then I studied in the US, free capitalism, Milton Friedman, all this. I believed in it also. I believed in all these narratives. Then that became the holy grail. But in my corporate career in the sporting goods and apparel industry, I also saw the downsides there. I realized I'm part of that system and stepped out. And what the ultimate answer is, I cannot say. I think we have to navigate towards that through intentionality. I just know and I sense, I intuit it has much more to do with nature. It's much more imitating or taking inspiration from nature. So that's why I believe deeply into regenerative design and biomimicry, and to really make economy again a subset of ecology. That's important, and we have to understand that. We as human beings have to understand that what kind of role we play on this planet, and move the narrative forward that we are not this super superior species, because without the other species and the right living conditions, we will not exist anymore. So I do believe in hybrid futures. I don't think we'll move back to caves, but we have to catch up and build the natural system, or reintegrate what we have into a natural system, which is not extractive, which is not ruining nature and biodiversity, and which is also healing, um, which is healing relationships between people, to heal collective trauma, to heal individual trauma, collective trauma, which sits at the root oftentimes. Also to allow yourself to act out in more sustainable ways. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I know that was a big one.
Yeah, it was a bit of an open-ended question, but I'm firmly with you that nature can be an incredible teacher with so much R&D, right? Behind it, to really learn from it and guide us in many ways. So what would you say? I'd love to maybe go a little deeper there. And what kind of guiding principles do you think we can take from nature, and how do you think this can be applied in like urban communities? Because obviously there was a stat I was reading the other day that by 2050, 70% of the population will live in urban environments. So how can we take some of these? What are some of those principles that you think could be incredibly powerful, and how could they be applied in urban communities, in your view?
Mhm. I would still always go back to nature. It's like regenerative design, biomimicry is in nature. And so what we find today, the predominant order in our social community, social systems is hierarchy. Hierarchy coming from the military mainly. That's why, and many companies or the corporate world, also in the say administrative world, all the parlance is highly influenced from military lingo, like working up the ladder, calling the shots, going through the ranks, all these things. It's like this is military language, and it is this highly established hierarchy thinking which we have. And it's not to say that there's no hierarchy in nature. There is. There's the leader of the wolf pack, there's the lion king, whatever. But there's also a whole lot more collaboration, intuitive collaboration going on. If you look at ants, how they collaborate. If you look at a school of fish, a flock of birds, how they move in synchronicity. There's much to be learned from nature. So people have started working on concepts like this: holacracy, sociocracy, democracy. There's so many crises and thoughts. The thing is, they want to get away from pure hierarchy, and going into empowerment. And I think that is also a path which I can foresee, that this is very beneficial for urban communities. Like urban, all the way to the mayor and the administration, but also all the way down to the citizens of a city, of an urban environment, how they organize, self-organize, or get empowered. So, like in nature, biomimicry, you don't only find technical solutions. Like the leaf was the example for the solar cell, or like the shark skin was the example for the airplane coating to minimize air resistance. So it's we find much more on that, like also social structures, how they can be much more efficient, how they can be much more goal oriented and more harmonious, because that's one of the key objectives you're trying to nexus on. The harmony part is in there, and you find a lot of harmony in nature. Not only, we said this, the lion still hunts the gazelle and eats it. It's not so harmonious, but he is like on the overall picture is harmonious again. I think we have to try to emulate these sort of social structures as well. And if we want to live in harmony with nature, the hierarchy is definitely not the hierarchy only based on dominance and manipulation is definitely not according to nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what I'm taking out. Or it's like I probably would best answer that question.
And when we look at the concept of regenerative development, if we had to apply it from an economic perspective, what principles do you think would stand out from you? You know, what guiding ideas could help also people listening understanding what regenerative development may mean, you know, even from a financial perspective?
I think it needs a lot of re-education around the topic of money, what money actually is. You know, money per se is not bad. What had become bad is money became the objective. Initially, money started out as a means to trade faster and more easily. But at one point in history, the money stream departed from the real value. And then money became the sole objective. And that led to, since the beginning of capitalism and now hypercapitalism or e-capitalism, to that false goal orientation, which drives and to extractive models. You know, it's like, why do people extract so much from Mother Earth? We just observed global Earth overshoot day. Yeah. So that's that type of extraction which I'm talking about. And people, for instance, some people make money, you know, short-term currency trading or crypto trading. What is this? So there's in essence no real value creation. This is a gamble. This is a bet. Right? So it's like, this is what I'm talking about, that the real value stream had, or the money, the concept of money, which is a human construct, by the way, which has only existed for the shortest time on this planet, as far as we know. That I think that torpedoes it, and I think many people need to be learned about, re-educated about money, because around money there's a lot of wounds too. You know, one of my favorite books on that topic is The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist.
Yeah, we talked about it.
It's a great book, because, you know, it talks, she worked with the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich, but it's such a sensitive topic, and has so much shame and guilt and things around it. And like, many people do not understand the essence of money. Money just became a goal, and society and media support that image. You know, they fortify it. They repeat it so many times, so it became such a strong element, toxic element in our culturescape, which promote short-termism, which promote what happens in stock markets, how companies operate. You know, so if Gemeinwohlökonomie and B Corp, they say people, planet, profit. So nothing wrong with making a profit if you create a great value, but it has to be on par with what else you create. Yeah, and there's ways to measure that. And then in the bigger scope, when they say, okay, if we want to get away from capitalism into a well-being economy, what is a well-being economy? Like, how do we assess that? What does success look like in a well-being economy? You know, I can get the closest indications probably from the likes of the world happiness indicators, but that's only on a national level. You know, Bhutan always wins.
Yeah.
They're not the richest, but they always win. Like, and then if you look into Europe, the Nordics are always leading. So and the Danes are the happiest people in Europe. And then if you look into the Danish society and the Danish model, what do you find? You find relatively high taxes, up to all the way to, like, at the highest to up 80%. You have tax financed, a high world-class education system. You have a tax financed world-class health system. You almost have no poverty, no, doesn't exist, and you have no super riches, because they get taxed and the money gets taxed. But you got a very strong middle class. You have a very strong middle class, and people feel balanced. There's also a good work-life balance. That's what they report, and they have good relationships. And like, if you look into happiness research, which then touches onto that well-being economy, which the likes of Ariana Huffington and Harvard does it, and there's a guy in Germany called Eckhart von Hirschhausen, they always arrive at the same factors which makes people really happy. Number one is always human relationships, period. Number two is physical and emotional health. Number 3 is covering your basic needs and already being part of being something bigger. And then there's the entire kind of like balance between life elements thing. They all arrive at the same conclusions, right? So we also know that from the Lotto millionaire winners or the Lotto millionaires, that they, a year later when they won the lottery, they're the base at the same happiness level or below than the year before when they won the lottery. So it's like, no, money, like just the concept of money, sustainably and long term doesn't make people happy. That we know through many experience and through research. So what is that? These elements, and I think it revolves around these: having good relationships, having a good health system, having a good education system, contributing to society. And so you overlay the findings from Denmark or even Finland and happiness research, you get to a model which tells you how that works. And that's a national level. It's not necessarily just an urban level. It works in Copenhagen as much as a small Danish village close to the Baltic coast or in the woods of Finland. So I think that's where we get closer to it, closer to it.
Yeah.
And then to create value for nature or regenerate nature, but also make a profit. So to put those in balance. But oftentimes those are medium-sized or bigger medium-sized companies. So they're not like the big heavyweights. Big heavyweights they're in the stock market. And the stock market, that's not a reality yet. Stock market is short-term earnings per share on a quarterly basis. And that's the biggest lie ever, that they take that as a future indicator as for cash flow. And we know that. I've lived that. I lived in a company who cut a lot of research and development and development programs for people, and they created a huge result, a great result, but the substance was hollowed out from the entire structure. So it's not right. So how do you if you then say these, taking the free lunch or taking the freebie from people and from nature, and the same holds true for nature. We can talk about carbon prices and extractive business models for hours on end or days on end. It's like, how do you price in these externalities fairly? And there's some first projects I know about, like Harvard does one with a New York Stock Exchange. There's a couple, and like world bankers, ex-world bankers have models. The problem is they're just not applied yet. They're not perfect. None of them will be perfect. No model will ever be. No model will ever truly reflect reality. There's always a margin of error. But you at least you got to try and get closer to it, and that's the problem. You're not trying. Like then we keep sticking to money, which is the evil. Like not evil, but like as when it's the focus, then it still becomes extractive and it does harm to people and to nature. Right. So we need to at least try something new, and then don't let get perfect in the way of getting better, but to apply something. Like whoever starts first, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, Frankfurt, Paris, just go for it. But that's not a reality just yet.
Yeah.
So I think that is absolutely needed if you want to move things on the bigger scale. So B Corp is an early indicator, but if you put B Corp, like all the value creation in terms of critical mass against what's the old world, it's still minimal, unfortunately, and I hope it grows faster. Yeah.
And moving sort of on a more micro scale, you talked about obviously Denmark representing a model of inspiration in many ways. If we moved more on the micro level, thinking about businesses, because I know you do work with businesses, do you have any maybe case studies in your experience at B Corp or the other sort of communities you're part of where let's say, regenerative economic principles have been successfully integrated into businesses, and potentially even the impact that these businesses have had, let's say, in urban communities and how it has empowered them as a result. Do you have any kind of case studies or examples that maybe you could share that have inspired you?
There's many great studies. So for one client of mine used to be, we're not working at the moment, but we had a long-term project with Weisha Media to integrate the SDGs in that media company with a base in Hamburg, and to integrate all 17 of them. And they became a partner of the UN to promote and to communicate these 17 SDGs and throughout Europe. And the effect which you could see on the motivational levels, engagement levels of employees was amazing. It's just through the roof. People really want to work for purpose. People want to have a meaning because everyone watches the news. Everyone knows what's going on, and especially the younger generations, the Gen Zers and the Gen Alphas and the Gen Betas, which are now coming up. They want to work, but they want to make an impact. They want to make a difference. They want to be part of the new, right? And so to see that, it was already 2017, 2018, very early to see that, but it was already palpable. Now it's much more palpable. So that was a great example, but there's many more. So for instance, what's that company? Greystone Bakery in New York. They're a prime example from the conscious economy, conscious capitalism community. They give ex-prisoners a chance to go back into the work life by not doing background checks, and they appreciate it, and they just go there and huge success, huge economic success, huge social success, also for the integration of these ex-prisoners who just want a new chance and have changed through their tenure in prison. Then I know a company. They make paints. The name wouldn't say anything. They're out of Bavaria, Altmühltal, and visionary leader, which it always takes. And he also one of the leading B Corps in. They make really paints from natural ingredients. So, and they have that river going through their valley, and it's a really small city there. And basically, through the B Corp and through the SDGs, they also work through all the SDGs. There's so much innovation, there's so much engagement, bottom up. This is just positively crazy. And they do cooperations with the likes of Fraunhofer, etc. And they take a lot of pride. So, like, once you have set fire on these things, and it's honest, it's not just make believe. Yeah, unfortunately, there's also many companies who do all the washing, the whitewashing, the greenwashing, the rainbow washing. But once they feel it's real, and our leader he goes for it, and he lets us do, and he empowers us. Boy, does that gain a momentum, and it's magical. So, yeah. So I think those are three great examples for that it can work. It does work.
Can work. And going more specifically on that, you talked about, measuring, and obviously that's the whole goal, measuring beyond traditional economic or financial metrics. What are your views, having worked with clients and also being in that sort of conscious business community? Should success be measured, or how is it being measured in a way that can drive sustainability, but also regeneration, also in urban communities and beyond? What would be your take on that?
I think we are with the triple P bottom line, people, planet, profit. We are at the beginning, at the very beginning. I think it can get much more granular, Like, I'd even go to say, like, how do you measure ecosystems? Like, does a species disappear? Is there imbalances? Is stuff like this? I think you can develop KPIs for this very being. Where we're in business, we are currently struggling. We're making best efforts to at least get to the triple P bottom line and think about, okay, what is your all human aspects you can look at? So starting with your own employees, then also with your suppliers, go down the supply chain, which is often a huge complexity. Like some industries have very deep supply chains. And what does it mean for our customers, for our end customers? And how can and the communities we're operating in. So not to forget the communities. So how do you assess that already? That's a handful, and you have like these three parts already, and then you have to create KPIs, and you have to measure them and maintain them. Somehow get the data points. Otherwise, you can call it something if you don't have a parameter. It doesn't mean anything, right? So if you don't have a timeline over, like, are we getting better? Are we getting worse? It's like otherwise, it's just make believe. It's like you don't have factual things. So. And there's also no, I mean, B Corp is probably the best you have because there are standardized KPIs there as a best practice. But I would encourage every company, even not B Corp, but try to measure something in these realms. Do it. Like if it comes to nature or planet P, then the only, well, not the only, but the most solid figure is the carbon footprint, which is defined through the greenhouse gas protocol, scope 1, 2, and 3. The formula is clear, how you have to report. You cannot fudge things. In these scopes, is very clear. That's why you do a life cycle analysis, and you have a company carbon footprint, and you can break it down into product carbon footprint and so forth. Then you can, and it definitely also needs things like biodiversity KPIs, and there's big panels on the international levels trying to work that out because it becomes complex. Biodiversity, what does that mean? Is it just your meadow where you have a couple insects and actually it's many insects, usually thousands of insects live there. You just don't see them, and microorganisms and plants and all these things. But how do you assess that? How do you assess that? How do you get the data points? Even though we know then theoretically what this meadow or let's say a riverbed, whatever, with all these thousands of life forms there, how do we measure that health? Yeah. And so that it needs a lot of exploring. I think and I have hope, because I said it's I believe in hybrid futures, which a friend of mine coined this term. Her name is Asha Singhal, and she has that I think that tech and new tech, especially big data and AI, can help us to get there and to also get the data. Yeah, and then with sensors, which we can apply, which then can get us the data points to come to that more of an equilibrium. Right now, that's a pure vision. But I think that's when we get closer to tipping point, I think when it takes off, that can be that new reality. At least that's how I have that visual in my mind.
Yeah. And then what I find interesting is also looking at the, if it's people, planet, profit, how do you look at them from a systemic point of view where you don't look at them from a reductionist, individualistic point of view, but how do you create, feedback loops of where one informs the others and you look at the whole? And I think it's kind of going back to that point that the sum of its parts, right? That the whole is larger. And so it's kind of interesting to look at them individually and then look at them systemically and what that produces.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a big multi-factor formula or problem to solve. And we need all the new tech to help us with that, because it's mind-boggling, just like if you look at one of these, say, financial reports today and it always starts with people, planet, and then profit. I like that of these B Corps. But if you put it next to it, there's a complexity. I mean, these guys put a lot of effort in measuring and managing, much more than a standard company. So it does take that effort and this realness to get to it. And so I think in this sense, this machines can do this better and faster. And also do the correlation analysis, like you just said, multiple factor correlation analysis, and point out patterns and all these things. And yes, fingers crossed. We need it fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely it's whether we like it or not, something needs to change. So it's a great opportunity for all of us to take responsibility and move towards a better future. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time. It was truly inspiring to learn about you and about your experience, and giving us all hope that we can all play a part and that we can all learn and collaborate with each other, and most importantly think beyond traditional metrics and traditional views to create an impact that is more holistic. And we have so much around us to learn from, and you talked about nature, about biomimicry and regenerative development. Those are all incredibly powerful perspectives that we can bring in our day to day, right? So thank you for your time and for sharing your insights.
For sure. And thank you for having me. And yeah, kudos to all of you. And if you ever have that faint thought of like, I'm too small to make a difference, I always answer with that famous statement by the Dalai Lama, who said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, then try sleeping with a mosquito in the room. Everyone can make a difference, and that's what I want to leave you with. And thank you again for having me.
Fantastic. Wonderful words of encouragement. Thank you again, Rob, and thank you all for joining us, and see you in the next episode. Thank you.
We're good.